If you turn over to the next page, page 4. On page 4, what you have are some things that have fluctuated in the past. Some things that have fluctuated in terms of how they were formed in the past tense. So, for example, with catch, let's see, what do you have for catch? So, yesterday I caught. You guys have caught. The original form, past tense form of this verb was catched. Now, it's changed over through analogy. Through analogy with teach and taught, it's changed over to catch, caught. But don't let anyone ever argue that the original form of a word or of an expression is necessarily the best. The one that's socially accepted is simply the one that's socially accepted. There's no principle of language that the original forms are the ones that are going to function best socially. In 6, you see things that are possibly fluctuating today. Most people don't use the verb strive, so they say strived, even though there was an earlier past tense form of strove. Some people, at least in West Virginia, they have a difference between hanged and hung. That hanged is for things you're trying to execute, and hung are for things like pictures in the wall. You guys have that one? Yeah, I actually don't have that one, but my students tell me about it all the time. Sneak and snuck. For L, you have yesterday I snuck. Sneak was actually original form, and then snuck is the innovative form. But my students argue really violently about this, and I don't know why. But they accuse each other of all kinds of ignorance based on whether they're sneaked or snuck, and I've never had any strong feelings about it. But take a look at number 7. Here's the point of going through language variation and working up towards things that are stigmatized. With number 7, you have number 7M, you have work. Last week I worked. And that's the socially accepted past tense form. The previous past tense form was wrought, as used later on, as in wrought iron. Iron that's been worked. That's been lost. No social stigma about using worked. But if you take a look at 8O, what you have is know, and the past tense of which is. And lots of the different varieties of English use know. Now what you gotta ask yourself, that's often socially stigmatized, but why? It can't be because using an ED on the ending is bad, because worked is fine. So what you gotta do, and possibly you can do this with your students, is ask what social factors might cause no to be seen as bad. Now, in finishing up here, what you take a look at on page 5, is the same kind of exercise as the past tense, but this time consider all of these nouns. You can go through this, and you'll find that your brain also has a very clear pattern of when to use plurals. You also have irregular plurals, which used to be productive, used to follow a clear pattern, but are now fossils. And in 11, you see in line 552 of Chaucer's The Man of the Law's Tale, you see iron. Iron used to be the plural form of I, just like ox has a plural form oxen. That en used to be a regular plural marker, just like child and children. And then you see the modern innovations there, 12. When it gets stigmatized is where you get to 12E at the bottom of page 5, where you have foot. That's a regular process, but that's often socially stigmatized. So what you got to ask yourself is why? What social factors in the environment are causing that kind of stigma? If you turn over on the back page real quickly, you see in 13, if there was one thing to change, what I would recommend is that college teachers and other teachers talk about letters as representing sound rather than letters making sound. Like, oh, this letter makes, the TH makes this sound. TH doesn't make any sound. I got TH right here. No sound is being made there. What you got to consider is that letters represent sound. As you look through here, the R, the L have different sounds to them. As you look through 16 and 17, the TH has different sounds to it. But only some of them are stigmatized. In the South, in areas of the South, in North Carolina, something like birth and birth is not stigmatized, but in areas of Detroit, it is. And you got to ask why. So to close here, what you need to consider is that your students have language variation, because they're human. What you have to do is help use that language variation to examine closely how language works. Because language variation is a natural resource for teaching, but it's not a natural concept. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, any questions, any comments? Oh, somebody must have something to say. Kirk, how many times have you tried this with actual classes, teachers, or students?
A bunch of times. I've tried it from 12th grade through 4th grade in different configurations. And usually it all depends upon the attitudes of the class, obviously. From 4th grade up until like 6th grade, they're really amenable to it. 8th graders apparently are the coolest people on earth. And they're not always. Some of the 12th graders are. So it really depends on how much they're actually willing to look at themselves and look at their own language.
Kirk?
Yes.
One thing you didn't say that I think is worth pointing out is that linguistically all varieties are equal.
Yes.
And I just wondered if you could comment briefly on how it is that certain varieties come to be stigmatized.
The language itself isn't the thing doing the stigmatizing. It's simply this, whatever social attitudes are about the group, be it Native Americans, be it African Americans, gets transferred to the language. So the criticisms about vernacular forms have no basis of linguistic validity. They're simply attitudes transferred to the language forms. So for example, something like foot, feet, versus foot-foots. Foot-foots is a regular process of making something plural. The foot-feet change used to be a regular process before the Anglo-Saxons came in 452 and founded English, but it hasn't been since then. So we're talking about a process that's out of date by about 1,500 years. A little bit of innovation, and people are willing to heap all kinds of social labels on those forms.
Thank you, Kirk.